So actually, I think there is something special about the Supersaw of the Roland JP-8000 and 8080, which of course you can find in many different plugins and different synthesizers and everything and so far. But by far, I think what's more important to say is like it actually defined a whole genre, a whole era of electronic dance music. And I think it's worth to talk about this one. And while like scrolling through the internet, I found this crazy article by Adams, and actually it's not an article, it's his bachelor thesis, I think done in 2010. So everything what I'm telling you in the next couple of minutes is basically based on his bachelor thesis. And I think it's worth to spread what he found out so far. So just pretty short, I was checking around if there's new science on what's going on here, but I think it's a nice overview, at least what's going on with the JP-8000 and its Supersaw implementation and what's so special about that one. And I'm pretty sure that since then, now it's already 14 years later, like there are many plugins that are already implementing these things what he discovered so far. And this is actually like how I got to the paper, because there was a patch I found in the Bitwig community which implemented his findings in patch and Bitwig in the grid, and I think it actually comes quite close to the Jupiter Supersaw, if not like that. So maybe I should compare it in this video as well, but that's not part of the script. But yeah. So just if you realize where the JP-8000 was coming from, it was one like of the first virtual analog synthesizers, which took back the idea of having direct controls and not menu diving with digital controls, but rather having knobs to twist around and have everything by control. And there are really just a few things in menus, like if for example you want to init the patch and one or two other things. But so far all the important settings you can find on the Jupiter 8000 itself. And I think this was a game changer, and very soon different companies and startups took the idea as well and started to implement their own variation and interpretation of an analog synthesizer called virtual analog synthesizers, because this was also the idea of DSP chips, so digital sound processing chips. We're focusing basically on floating point operations for signal processing rather than CPUs who are like monolithic with machine instructions per second and pretty good with those ones. We're like doing numerical operations, but these DSP chips coming especially from Motorola were pretty fast with doing things. So this was the era of one like musicians decide to get back to real music instruments and get away from deep diving into submenus of like computers, etc. But on the other hand, you had the technical revolution, or let's say evolution, or let's say development of DSP chips coming around. So I didn't prove it so far, or I didn't check where I got this one, but Access actually, the like company with the wireless synthesizer, they initially built controllers for the, I think, core, what was that? Waldorf synthesizers. And then he said like, okay, if I get such DSP chip, I can also do a crazy analog emulation of a nice chip. So I'm doing this and call this the virus synthesizer. But hey, I'm getting apart from the story. What's so special about the Jupiter 8 synthesizer? And the Jupiter 8 actually has multiple oscillators playing around, and you have multiple parts playing the same thing. And if you detune some things because it's analog, it actually gives you this nice vibe of doing things. And I think they thought like, okay, this sounds crazy and ambitious, so let's do the same thing with virtual triangles, saw waveforms and detune them. And so far they had the Super Saw, which is like 7 synthesizers together, and you can control how much they're detuned and how it's mixed together. And I will talk about this more now in detail. Fast forward, like you all know, like so many trance songs especially, and pad sounds, and like I don't know if you check hip hop even like in the 2000s. It just defined a whole genre, and maybe it's not the JP-8000 which was used in the song, I don't know, I don't care, but actually it defined like the sound, how a sound has to be. And then I think there was the dip in between, but now it's coming back. It's just like a normal instrument, what people are expecting how an instrument sounds like. And the Super Saw actually for me is a specific sound, and this is why I want to talk about this a little bit in detail, okay? So actually, what's so special about the Super Saw? The Super Saw is just a mixture of different saw oscillators, but it's not just that one. It's not just playing different saws. Actually, there are, I think, 4 essential types of ingredients that you have to follow up. One is like, of course, the detuning of the saws. Like, how do you detune these saws individually from each other? Then you can control with the one knob like how many saw, or like the frequency range of the detuning itself from one saw to each other. Then the third aspect is how much do you mix that one into the actual mix itself. So you can always go from the main saw, like the middle one, plus the others, and how actually everything is mixed together. And finally, and I think this is the most interesting one, in my opinion, it's actually the phase. Because the random phase, this is really something I think that was lacking a lot of synthesizers before, or at least virtual synthesizers actually to do so. But there are some more ingredients, and let's talk about this. So let me show you like how the detuning sounds like, and you get the idea. You have one parameter, you have one slider on the JP-8000, and actually it's quite interesting. Like it comes up quite linear as exactly up to the middle, and then from the middle it's getting straight crazy. Like really, it's not logarithmic, exponential. It's not linear, but actually you can really just from hearing to that one, you can say. From the middle, it's actually quite linear, and then it gets the parameter to the maximum is quite disastrous, or like increasing a lot. Yeah. So actually, if you tune the detune to the middle and you're fine with that one, and like if you push the slider just a few millimeters up there and it's still fine, think that's okay. But also based on the genre you're doing, or the especially sound, special sound you might looking for, looks in the upper millimeters than there. But this really depends on the genre you're doing. But if you're just looking for some regular pads and some regular naturally sounding detuning, just take half the slider. I think that's quite interesting. And when it's come to mixing, I think there's nothing more to say or so, but it should be quite intuitive what you're doing. So either you just like it or not. And especially like if you push the detuning harder and you really think about how much do you mix this one into the main mix of your pad or the main lead instead. I think it really depends on the kind of sound you're looking for and what you're doing actually. So I think this is quite individual what you're doing and what you prefer to do. And here again, Adam, really you should check out this paper. There are many mathematical equations I actually don't understand or I don't check, and many figures that actually quite interesting to look at. But so far at the end, in my channel at least, I want to focus just on the music, what's going on here. And I think it's quite worth to say that somebody did the science and the research behind that to reverse engineer what the Roland engineers did back then in the 90s. Something so far I haven't said yet, but if you're in front of JP-8000 and you have the classical saw oscillator going on, you switch to the Supersaw and then you realize it actually sounds quite thin. And I thought like, why is that? And I realized this already before I saw the paper, just playing around on my own synthesizer. But then you pretty fast realize there must be some kind of high pass filtering ongoing. Because means like they bypass the low frequencies. So it's less bass than with the normal saw. If you just check the regular saw, and Adam is describing this quite well in his paper, you just realize, okay, he's actually doing kind of high pass frequency filtering. And I take this just as granted and actually can hear it. And I think it's just because it makes sense. Like if you have too many oscillators going on, there might be too much bass and you might want to do some kind of filtering in the bass frequencies, and the JP-8000 actually takes care of that one by nature. When it comes to the phase, he actually found out that the phase is not just shifting, but actually is randomly spread between these oscillators. For me at least, I don't care so much about if it's actually or how the spreading is going on, but if you're just thinking of any re-implementation of a reactor patch or anything else, you should consider this one. And the nice thing from the musical point of view means like there is actually kind of vibrations or movement going on because of this. Because if you just hold the notes and you have different pad sounds going on, or notes playing, and you have different phase interactions, let's call it interactions, I think this is adding some kind of movement into your sound, and which is quite interesting. So another last thing I would love to mention here is in his conclusion, or also in his whole thesis, he says like, at least back then it was quite hard to find people who were not biased to software or to hardware or talking about each other. Either they were biased with like the hardware of course has to sound better, or you were a software guy and said like, this is just software, so what's the point about that one? I think in between or since 2010 the situation has changed a lot. I would love to get your comments on this, by the way. What do you think of that one? Plus I already made a video about the different Supersaw implementations on different synthesizers. Check this out, by the way. But still, I think it's worth to understand where the sound is coming from and actually what current implementations or current software synthesizers especially are doing, like Diva or Serum or the Virus, even with the Hypersaw, I think it was called afterwards. There might be already implementations who get the sound similar. I guess there are, but so far I've got the hardware. I got it pretty cheap a few years back because one or two things are broken just from the hardware or control point of view, but the sound engine of my JP-8000 fully works. By the way, while I was producing this video, I found out and figured out again just how fun it is to play around with the JP-8000 because all the controls are directly there. There's no menu subdiving or anything you have to do except of, for example, initializing the patch, which yeah, you just do once, yeah, right? But then, like, for example, I thought like, how is it like if you combine the sound of a Supersaw together with a pulse width modulator, oscillator, and you just do such things on the JP-8000. There are of course also some downsides, like if it comes to the filter. I think the filter and especially the attack curves, really, I'm not a friend of them. I don't want to say they suck, but at least I just always try to avoid them or get around them. So it's pretty fast. It pops up just around the sub. Maybe for some genres you might notice or you might love this one, but usually if you play around, it just is annoying. But those, I think it's okay if it's such an early implementation of a virtual analog synthesizer. Plus the filter, the resonance is just getting in there pretty fast and then creates sounds that are not really useful, at least for me, at least in my opinion. But okay, hey, I'm aware of this and that's okay. Other synthesizers are more versatile when it comes to the filter, but so far the sounds that are created by the JP-8000s, I know exactly what I'm getting from there, which is, I think, nice, and I don't have to ask more from a synthesizer rather than being iconic and unique and special. This is why I wanted to talk about the Supersaw. So thanks for your attention and talk to you soon.